The sun was setting over the dusty streets of Ajegunle when Ton made the decision that would destroy his life forever. He was a young man with big dreams but an empty pocket, the kind of person who was tired of watching his mates drive expensive cars while he trekked under the hot Lagos sun. He had heard whispers about a place where struggling men could find solutions to their money problems, a place that required no degree, no connection, and no hard work. All it required was courage and a willingness to do what others were afraid to do. That evening, as the harmattan wind blew through the narrow streets, Ton walked toward the edge of town where the old houses looked like they were ready to collapse at any moment. As he turned into a dark alley, an old woman appeared from nowhere, standing directly in his path. Her skin was wrinkled like ancient leather, and her eyes were sharp and knowing. She wore a faded wrapper and carried a wooden walking stick that tapped the ground with a hollow sound. She looked at Ton with a gaze that seemed to see straight into his hungry soul. "Young man, I know where you are going," she said in a voice that was both soft and terrifying. "Turn back now before it is too late. The path you are walking leads to a door that can never be closed again." Ton felt a cold shiver run down his back, but he quickly shook it off. He had not come this far to be stopped by the warnings of a strange old woman. He laughed nervously and told her to mind her business, saying he was just visiting a friend in the area. The old woman shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with a deep sadness that made Ton uncomfortable. "When the price comes for your soul, you will remember this moment. But by then, it will be too late to run." She stepped aside and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Ton standing alone in the fading light. He ignored the tight knot of fear in his stomach and continued walking until he reached a small compound with a red gate. Inside, a man named Chief was waiting for him. Chief was a short, fat man with a gold tooth and an expensive wristwatch that glittered under the dim light. He welcomed Ton with a wide smile that did not reach his cold eyes. Chief explained the deal clearly and simply. Ton would receive wealth beyond his imagination, but in exchange, he had to make a spiritual sacrifice. The sacrifice was not money or animals. It was something much darker. Chief brought out a small black mirror wrapped in red cloth and told Ton to look into it at midnight every day for 7 days. During those 7 days, Ton must never speak to anyone about what he saw in the mirror, and he must never show fear or weakness. If he completed the ritual, the money would start flowing into his life like water. But if he broke any of the rules, the mirror would claim his soul as payment. Ton hesitated for a moment, remembering the old woman's warning. But the hunger for success was stronger than his fear. He agreed to the terms and took the black mirror home, hiding it under his bed in a small room he shared with 2 other guys. That first night, Ton locked himself in the bathroom at exactly midnight and unwrapped the mirror. As soon as he looked into the glass, the reflection staring back at him was not his own. It was the face of a much older man with hollow eyes and a mouth that was twisted in a silent scream. The image was so disturbing that Ton dropped the mirror, but it did not break. Instead, it landed softly on the floor, and when he picked it up again, his own face had returned. He told himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him because of the late hour and the fear in his mind. The next morning, Ton woke up to find that his phone was buzzing with unexpected credit alerts. Money was appearing in his account from sources he could not explain. By the 3rd day, he had received enough cash to move out of his crowded room and rent a small apartment in a better area. People in the neighborhood started to notice his sudden change in lifestyle, asking him questions about his new success. Ton would just smile and say he had invested in a smart business deal. But every midnight, the ritual continued, and the face in the mirror became more and more terrifying. On the 5th night, the reflection showed him standing in a graveyard, surrounded by shadowy figures that were reaching out to touch him. Ton could not sleep anymore. His body was tired, his eyes were red, and a constant cold feeling followed him everywhere he went. On the 7th and final night, Ton stood in front of the mirror one last time, knowing that this was the end of the ritual. As the clock struck midnight, the reflection changed completely. This time, the mirror showed him the old woman from the alley, standing in a dark room filled with candles. She looked directly at him and spoke in a voice that echoed inside his head. "You were warned, but you chose gold over your soul. Now the debt must be paid." Tunde tried to look away, but his eyes were locked on the glass. Suddenly, the reflection reached out from inside the mirror, and a cold, invisible hand grabbed his wrist. He screamed and tried to pull away, but the grip was too strong. The room became freezing, and the lights began to flicker wildly. Tunde felt something inside him being pulled toward the mirror, something that was not his body but his very essence. By morning, Tunde's neighbors found him lying on the floor of his room, his eyes wide open and staring at nothing. He was breathing, but he was no longer truly alive. His body moved like a shell, but his soul had been taken by the mirror. The money in his account began to disappear as quickly as it had come, and within a week, Tunde was back to being broke. But this time, he was also empty inside, like a walking shadow with no purpose or joy. People whispered that he had gone mad, but the elders knew the truth. They said he had traded his soul for temporary riches, and the old woman at the alley had tried to save him, but he refused to listen. The black mirror was never found. Some say Chief took it back to use on the next desperate young man. Others believe it is still hidden somewhere in Lagos, waiting for another person who is willing to ignore the warnings. Tunde's story became a lesson told in the streets, a reminder that not every door should be opened, and not every warning should be ignored. The old woman was right. When the price came for his soul, it was already too late to run. Moral: desperation can make you blind to danger, but wisdom often comes dressed as a warning. Listen before you lose what you can never get back.